Hey guys, this is Survey Teardown 28 of the 50 Surveys Project. I'm Hannah, Qualitative Researcher and self-proclaimed survey snob at this point. We're on the road to 50 survey teardowns in 50 days. Today's teardown is of a customer satisfaction survey by Google, or rather by G Suite for Business, which I believe is now called Google Workspace. Before we dive in, I've said this in videos past, just a quick disclaimer that these teardowns are always more of a heuristic analysis. We don't know, of course, the research goal of the team who created the surveys. We don't know the specific metrics that they're intending to track, or what other surveys came before this or will follow up after this. So without having that bigger matrix of data and research that this lives inside, take these teardowns with a grain of salt. In other words, what I recommend, it might not hold for the Google team, but it does follow survey methodology, best practice, both for online surveys in general and then specific to satisfaction surveys, just like this one. All right, let's get into it. I have a few screenshots here. This survey is one that popped up for a paying user, so this is part of a customer experience. And these, there are 8 brief, speedy questions, which is fantabulous, especially since the survey pops up while using the desktop app, which is great because you want to leverage and capitalize on the fact that you have access to the user because they're in-app. But you also don't want it to be too much of an interference or burden that they click that X there and leave the survey. So keeping these questions easy, speedy, really helps. But let's look at the actual questions here. I'm going to flip through to the pivot table one, and we're going to go into markup mode. Okay, so these questions, the feature ones at least, and we'll get to the last one in a few, they're all asking about satisfaction here. They're asking about satisfaction with respect to specific functions or features inside the app. In this case, creating or using pivot tables. Based on the question alone, we assume that they're asking people who know what the features are by name or who've heard of them. But if they don't, if the user, the customer, doesn't know what a pivot table is or hasn't used it before, this question still caters to them with this NA option. I have not used pivot tables. This is actually a really important point because at first glance, it seems like the question just assumes that you use the feature, right? How else can you be satisfied or dissatisfied if you haven't used the thing? But they are mindful of people who have no idea about this feature, who haven't used it. And so by offering this NA as an option, the question kind of does double duty of separating feature users from non-users and then dissecting satisfaction of the users. And they really smartly combined use with satisfaction rather than first question is like, have you used the feature? And then following it up with, are you satisfied with the feature, right? So they've rolled these two into one. All right, let's get out of this mode. The other thing that's great here is the simplicity of this survey. For starters, it is the same question format, same rating scale, same even language for each of the questions. Overall, how satisfied are you with X, right? That makes answering much easier because I don't have to relearn the structure or the scale of the question. I can pretty much whiz through it from question to question. The more you can, especially in-app, ask brief focused questions, like find out 1 or 2 data points to answer and answering under the umbrella of one research question, exactly like this is doing, the higher your response rate, the better your customer experience, the more accurate your questions, because you're asking them in front of the experience you're asking about, right? So the user is using the app and you're injecting your super speedy, quick series of questions into their current experience and asking them about their current use. That way, you can kind of continuously stay engaged with your users, right? You're not running them into survey fatigue or overwhelm because you're always keeping a really quick pulse on where they're at. This last question here, let's go into markup mode. This is an opportunity to elaborate, right? It's always important as kind of a catch-all so that all users have space to give feedback that's not directly asked about in the survey, but maybe came to mind or is pressing for them. They can share about it. They can share it in this asking for additional feedback, right? To make this section more constructive and encourage people to actually weigh in, so it does more than act as like an in case type of question, is to add prompts. So like what kind of feedback can we, as the people asking the questions, suggest areas that that the user might have feedback about, just to prompt the user to think of feedback that maybe the product team knows is common, is a concern. This is a chance to ask the user about it directly. You still want to keep the question brief, exactly like they have it, like it's very tight and easily condensed, and then they're repeating the features that they asked about, right? The printing, collaborating, exploring sheets. I know how much you love my markup skills, but they're repeating all of those features, right? So those are prompts, but we want to be even more specific if we can, and keep it like what kind of feedback might be helpful here, right? So fewer people are going to respond to vague general questions, or fewer people will respond in a helpful way, unless of course they have like a hugely positive or a hugely negative experience, or they happen to be in like a giving mood. We actually want the survey to prompt them to respond and not hope they decide to because they're just that type of person. So while they've elaborated and reminded them on the features, it will be even more helpful to expand on what type of feedback the team has heard before that they can inject here to prompt the user. Make sense? I hope so. That is it for today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have questions or comments or disagreements, or if you want to share your own customer satisfaction or product survey, do it in the comments. I want to hear it. I want to see it, and I will respond back to you there. Hit subscribe so you're the first to know about the next survey teardown, and I will see you back here for teardown 29.